Hello and welcome to a new episode of Under the 128, the podcast all about darts away from the PDC's main tour. I'm Alex Moss, and alongside me, the grassroots darts guru, the man still unbeaten in the Darts Podcast World Championships, Matthew Kiernan, aka the Darting Nerd. Matthew, it's been a little while. How you doing?
Yes, really good, thanks. It's been a while, yes, and apologies for that. It's mostly my fault, has to be said. New job, basically. But it's been very good to catch up with lots of events that have been taking place in the intervening months since the last episode. And I've been to a few opens as well in the local area, which has been really great to be back at those again on a regular basis. And I've played a bit at Morden in the individual darts league as well. So it's been good to keep busy.
Good to hear, yeah. And of course, our listeners on the weekly Darts Cast, they'll have heard you over the summer. You've been busy sending us in interviews from the various opens that you've been to. And it's been a while, as you say, since our last episode back in May. And 3 months on, we've got plenty to catch up on. We'll be talking about the WDF, the ADC, UKDA, a little bit of the online league as well, ladies darts, and some soft drink talk as well later on as well. But first of all, Matthew, as it has been a few months, what have you been up to during the summer darting wise? Have there been any highlights from the summer?
Yeah, can I just say some players are more forthcoming than others when it comes to chats, but we'll leave that there. Yes, so what local opens have I been to? Well, I went to the Twitten Club, which is Southwick, social sports club in Brighton. That was good fun. That was eventually won by, who was that one by? That was won by Will Buckman, actually, who's a new name who perhaps you should keep an eye on. Kelly Ryan won the women's. Been to Basingstoke a couple of times, one of my favourite venues, especially because it has a Chinese restaurant, which is always very useful. Scott Walters won the most recent iteration of that, despite 3 tour card holders being in the field. Burfield in Reading had a big open over the weird bank holiday in June, if you remember that. God, that seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? But that was very good. Ross Smith won one of the events. Richie Edhouse won another one of those events that was there. And I've also been playing a bit as well in the Morden Individual Darts League, averaging around 51 now. So that's pretty good. I think it got up to an eye-watering 56 when we played, but averaging out of 51. So it's about a 28 handicap in golf, isn't it, I think?
You did bring out your best game against me. I think that's why I did lose. But yeah, I only play in a Wednesday night league, so I've not been as busy as you have darts-wise. And we're now rounding off our summer league season, and I've probably, being honest, had one of the worst seasons I've ever had. I think I've hardly won any games all season. But a few weeks ago, I was put forward for our end-of-season doubles tournament, and my partner and I, we managed to win 4 games. We're through to the finals night, which is next week when we're recording, so hopefully we can finish what's been a pretty poor season for me on a high, get a bit of silverware would be nice. And I think before that, the last game I won was against Andrew at Lakeside, so Andrew, of course, of Inside the WDF fame, so that tells you how long that losing run was. But I mentioned the WDF. Let's start off the show there. And when we last spoke on this show, it was just after Lakeside. We were looking back at their first World Championship, and a few months on now since that, what have you really made of the WDF these last few months? Have they been able to build on any momentum that they got from their first World Championship?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the disclaimer that we always put on this is that if you want to follow WDF in great detail, then definitely give Inside the WDF podcast manager Sinclair a follow and subscription, because he does a fantastic job, doesn't he? I believe that they have done, whether it's permeating through into the consciousness of the casual darts fan, it will be the ongoing challenge, won't it? Because for us, I mean, we have a vested interest. We're very interested in it, and we will go out of our way to follow all of those events that take place very regularly. And what's been very good for the WDF is that most travel restrictions now, or if not all the travel restrictions now, have now gone. And that means that you can go back to that what it was previously, and have all of those events and people traveling around, and especially players like like John Scott, and Diogo, of course, who go all around the world chasing points. That can happen again now, and now you're getting a much fairer reflection of what the status and what those players that we like to see come through the system now have that opportunity to do. And most tournaments now do the live updates. It's very rare that you have an event which doesn't have live updates or coverage, or at least a stream. I think the one that came to mind was the England National and England Open, which was conspicuous by the absence of updates during it, but it did have a very good stream. So I think they've built up momentum in terms of the current darts for following and fraternity. Whether they can expand on that, well, that would be the same issue that the BDO had. What do you make of it?
Definitely the Dart Connect was something that I was going to bring up as well, because it is such a great tool, isn't it, for darts in this day and age now. Of course, all the PDC events are covered on there, whether that be the main tour, the Challenge Tour, Development Tour, Women's Series. And for darts fans, they go on that website and you can literally follow every single game, every single score as it happens. And the WDF, of course, a lot of their events are now transferring onto Dart Connect. And as we've spoken about in the past, it is difficult to get every single nation, every single body that they've got on board with that. But the more they do that, the better, because as we've seen, I think there was a weekend in Belgium recently where we had no Dart Connect and hardly anything, any updates at all. So I think, yeah, getting eyes on the product is a big part of it, and Dart Connect is going to help them really. But as far as the World Championship, we were talking about it on the Weekly Darts Cast recently as well, Burton and I, and we were saying, is it a bit of a concern that we've not had any details about next year's World Championship in 2023, and we've not got the dates, we've not got the venue, we've not got any real details about it. And you've got players that are winning events that qualify them for the World Championship next year, and they don't really know when it's going to be. And I think we've seen a few of the ladies players that they've talked about they're playing in some of these events and they're not really sure what it's going to lead to. And we'll come on to talk a bit more about the ladies game later, but we know with the PDC Women's Series there is the end goal of qualifying for their World Championship, the Grand Slam, and of course the new Women's World Match Play as well. So having that end goal is very important. So I think as far as the World Championship, that's something that hopefully we're going to find out a bit more sooner rather than later. As far as the momentum side of things, of course, they did get a lot of interest from darts fans during that World Championship, and since then we have seen they've been fairly active on social media with updates. The website as well, we've had the roundups as well, and of course they are relying, I think, mainly on volunteers. And maybe it would be good to see the WDF maybe put more investment into that side of things, because as we know that the media side of things now with any sport, with any organisation, it is such an important tool to have. And you mentioned it there, you've got the streams on events as well. You can upload the games, you can upload highlights or match winning shots, checkouts onto social media, and it just gets more eyes on the product. So I think, there's still plenty that the WDF can do, and I think, the next big thing for them is getting those details out for the World Championship, and of course before then the World Masters as well.
Just 2 points that you picked up on there. It still feels like you have to work quite hard to find the stream. It's like a treasure hunt. You're too young for the Crystal Maze, but it is a bit like that. It's like, oh God, yes, I found the stream, brilliant. So it does. You do have to work quite hard for that on some of these events as the weeks go by. Of course, the other point you make in relation to, well, what does this lead to? That's the same issue that the BDO had in its sort of last year or two, when the bookings started to be slower in terms of what was ahead in terms of venues, and we had the World Masters debacle, of course, which we were there. Let's not talk about that. But that's the same problem that they faced, and obviously the WDF has to be acutely aware not to fall into that trap, really. So hopefully they don't. But what tournaments for you, Alex, have you or players or matches have really stood out to you? Obviously there's been the Dutch Open and the Australian Open, of course.
Yeah, there has been plenty going on, hasn't there? And you look at the WDF tour, and you touched on it there, with travel restrictions virtually being eased pretty much all around the world now. We have seen more players go to events, and we have seen more events come back on the calendar, and practically every weekend, whether that be in Europe, in Australia, New Zealand, in North America, there are events now happening every weekend, which is good to see. And probably the highlights for me the last few months since we last spoke, I've got to give a mention to the Welsh Open weekend. We saw Bo Greaves and Fallon Sherrick go up against each other in the final, which was on the stream, and and what a great final it was. Great to see those two players. Many regard they'll be in the top four of pretty much any darts fans, ladies players at the moment as far as the standard, and they did serve up a great final, both averaging over 90. Bo Greaves winning that one 5-4 to get the title, and the Dutch Open, that's something that we've not seen for a few years. I think 2020, start of 2020, that was the last time. So a couple of years since we saw that event. It did come back, and Bo Greaves again, as she seems to do with all these events, mopping them up, and Jelle Klaassen sealing possibly a return to Lakeside. We don't know yet where that World Championship's going to be, but he is qualified for that event. Of course, he was the youngest winner of the men's event back in 2006. So good to see Jelle playing well again. And the Australian Open was hard to really follow if you weren't in Australia. They did have a stream, but it was difficult to sign up to. So we didn't really see much coverage of that, which was a shame. But Raymond Smith winning the men's event, Bo Greaves beating Makuru Suzuki on the way to winning the ladies event. And a couple of players I'll give a mention to, Halpai Pua, who has, we've seen him play in the WDF World Championship this year, but he's really making some strides this year. I think he's up to number 7 in the rankings at the moment. So he's making some good strides, getting titles, getting to lots of finals. Neil Duff back up to number 1, the reigning men's world champion in the WDF. And Wes Newton as well, a name from the past, I guess, playing in the Premier Leagues, getting to major finals. He made the final of the Welsh Open, and he'll be looking to maybe get to another world championship if he has another few good runs over the next few months.
Yes, good to see world champion Bo Greaves doing very well.
I was going to ask you, is Bo Greaves the world champion? Everyone wants to know.
Does everyone want to know, Alex? Surely it speaks for itself. That was a fun night on Twitter, wasn't it? Yes. So I think just to mention a couple of other players. I mean, I think one of the things about the WDF, which is so good, is to see, these emerging players, because sometimes they don't always come through those PDC feeder tours. Sometimes they come through exclusively through the WDF or primarily through them anyway. Just to mention Alexander Merckx, who's done very well. He's ranked 20th at the moment, I can see here. Won the Helvetia Open in June and Lithuania Open a couple of weeks after our last episode, actually. So he's riding high and he should be in for January, whatever that event is. I just wanted to mention Anke Zylstra as well, actually, who's often overlooked when it comes to these events, but obviously she won the Denmark Open, but we knew that because that was before the last episode. But she won this. She was runner-up. Apologies, and she was the Swiss Open winner just a few weeks after our last episode as well. She's 4th at the moment, so another player who's often overlooked when having those discussions about women's players, but is very talented, and it's just as well that WDF exists for that purpose. I think the last point I would want to make is just in relation to the Australian Open. I certainly have more interest in the Australian Open of the WDF variety than I do with the World Series events that are taking place at the moment in the PDC aspect, which are, let's be honest, glorified exhibitions. Don't get me wrong, they're big cash cows, which is why they do them, and of course that money does flow down into the subsidiary tours that I have more interest in, and pro tours, of course. But yeah, I mean, I feel that going to Australia and having a ranked tournament is far more interesting for me. Now, you can obviously argue about the way that the Australian Open was ranked, and how eligible people being invited to compete in it, for example, that weren't Australian. You can argue all day long about that, can't you? But I certainly have more interest in that variety of event that actually has that extra meaning than a glorified expo, which is what we're getting at the moment in the PDC side of things. Controversial?
Always from you, isn't it? Well, moving on to the ADC, and again, big news since we last spoke is the World Open. One of their big events they've announced is coming to my neck of the woods, Suffolk, in December. And just give you a few details on that. It is a £40,000 prize fund, men's and ladies. It's going to be running from the 1st to the 5th of December at the Pakefield Holiday Village in Suffolk, and it is open to anyone that doesn't have a PDC tour card. You can enter and play in the event. What was your reaction when you saw the news about this new event, the World Darts Open from the ADC?
Well, my first reaction is that's just down the road from you, isn't it, Alex? So I hope you've got your entry in.
I should be seeded, really.
Well, you should be, yes, just purely on geography. It's very exciting. It is exciting. And I think anyone that can get £40,000 worth of prize money and raise that and then be able to advertise it, I mean, that's an incredible achievement, really, if you think about it. If for any of us that have done a bit of fundraising in our time, either charity or as volunteers, that's a really sizable amount. And of course, to secure the venue as well and to be able to advertise it so far out. I mean, that's really, really very good. And I'm much more on board with this idea because if you remember when they were when the ADC was MAD, there was a advertised, quote unquote world championship, which was advertised. And I think a few of us went, don't know about that. This is a much better concept, I think. And I think obviously, we're going to talk about the tour in a minute, but the tour aspect is a real strength, I think, of the ADCs because that gets overwhelming positive feedback. And rightly so, because you can click onto Darts Atlas now, Dart Atlas. Hello, Matt Langan, if you're listening. And you can follow the stream, which is really good, really great setup. And Carl Redden does the commentary on that and does a very good job on that. And it's really good. And this is, another pathway, if you like, for the grassroots game and another option. So those are the positives. I appreciate sometimes I'm critical, but we're critical of all the organisations when we need to be. But I think that's it's an incredible achievement, and I look forward to seeing you being in it, Alex.
Yeah, we shall see. I think I'll be taking a break from darts soon with my new job I've got coming up. So maybe practice-wise, I won't really be ready to go and pick up the £10,000, which is on offer to the winner of this event. But yeah, 40 grand prize fund. It's not to be sniffed at, is it? And just looking at the press release that the ADC put out about the event, and it is going to be running with a round-robin style event. So everyone that enters will get at least 3 games. It's going to be capped 256 men. 64 ladies, and there will be players that will get an automatic entry into the event. They will be seeded. You'll have the ADC Global Champion, which is Jared Cole at the moment. That will be the number 1 seed. You'll have the ADC European Champion, which recently that was won by Kevin Painter, so he'd be the number 2 seed if he's there. And the player that wins the Red Dragon Champion of Champions, which Matthew will come on to talk about, you're going to be at this weekend. They're going to be a seeded player as well. So lots going on there, and also worth mentioning as well the international element of this event, because yes, it is a World Open event and it is going to be held in England, but the ADC, they are looking outside of the UK for players to get in. So they are going to be running qualifiers in Italy, in Ireland, the Mediterranean, Scandinavia, New Zealand, Australia, Belgium, the Netherlands. So all over the world, there are going to be qualifiers going on, some which have already happened to get into this event, which I think is a very good thing to do as well. And of course, we've spoken about the ADC in the past, and MAD, they tried to run before they could walk. This time around, it is more of a measured approach. They are walking before they can run, and maybe sometimes we get a bit frustrated that they're not maybe moving a bit quicker, but you can see they are trying to move things a little bit slower than before, and it seems to be working well. They've got this event off the ground, and yeah, we look forward to finding out more details about it when players are qualifying for the event. And hopefully, like with the Championship Tour, which we'll come on to talk about in a moment, there is going to be some coverage. There will be a stream, and us fans, we're going to be able to watch it and see who's going to win that first World Open.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've been invited potentially to cover that.
Yes, depending on my work situation at the time. I've kindly been invited by the guys at the ADC. So yeah, if I've not got work, if I'm available that weekend, I'll try and get down for it, definitely.
Yeah, it should be good, and I think that there's nothing to suggest that it won't be, based on, as I said, the overwhelmingly positive feedback that the Championship Tour has had, and that has been a huge success, has to be said, and one you would hope that they can build on that, and then they can stretch out onto those other venues geographically that perhaps a few players have spoken of in terms of their frustration, perhaps in the fact that it's been quite well, they're quite far away, aren't they? Let's be honest, for those of us in the south or east of England. But obviously they've got to build a platform and establish those connections with the venues and trust that they can do it and not make a loss, of course, because that's the other problem that you get in local darts, is that you can organise a massive event and then lose loads of money, which does happen, unfortunately. And of course, to be able to go onto Darts Atlas and have the calendar of events, I mean, you almost take it for granted now, but that's been fantastic to see, and that's great that they're still advertising that, and a lot of regions do seem to have really gone for that and really embraced that as a concept, and for results to be there and be able to check up on people's performances. I think that's really, really great. I think the challenge that the ADC have is that not all areas seem to have embraced this as much as they perhaps would have liked. And I think that's very evident in London and the south of England in particular. And I think also where you are in the east of England, where there doesn't seem to be many events embracing the ADC element. There's been one near me in Morden. I couldn't make it, unfortunately, but not really much else. And I don't think there's been anything near yourself. And again, that whole concept of the regions, I'm a Titan, you're an Eagle, lest we forget. I think that's not fallen by the wayside, but almost sort of forgotten about, really, in a sense, because people that I talk to rarely discuss that. You have to ask yourself why that is the case. It's a tricky one, really, and I think some of that is a hangover from the MAD stuff from last year. But every organizer has their issues. I think Matt Langan very kindly sent me some links to people doing some work in Burnham-on-Sea, which I haven't fully checked out yet. But there's some great stuff happening in different specific areas and promoting the grassroots game in certain areas. So hopefully ADC can bring all of this great work together into another pathway. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and it is a big mission that the ADC are taking on, isn't it, as far as the amateur game in the UK, because there are so many different organisations, people that are running events up and down the country, up and down the UK, and to get them all on board, they got quite a lot of them on board the first time round with MAD, didn't they? But as you say, getting them on board at a second time round when the first time didn't quite go according to plan is going to be more difficult, isn't it? But I think what they're doing at the moment, if they can get more people on board, fantastic. And I think they've just got to focus on the people that they have got and show them the opportunities that they can provide. And hopefully, as time goes on, word will spread around. This is what the ADC are offering. We're putting on these events like you are. We're getting ADC ranking points, and this is what the players that do well are getting the opportunities to do. So I think it is a case of watching how it develops over the months of the years ahead, and hopefully more of those regions will get on board. And I guess really the other side of things, we spoke about the World Open, but the other strings to the bow, if you like, of the ADC, and we'll come on to talk about your favourite subject here, Matthew, the belts. They are still a thing, and we've had 2 more weekends of the Championship Tour, which, as you touched on, has got a lot of good feedback. And we've also had the belts come back. We've had James Richardson, who was the European champion. He's lost his belt. Kevin Painter is the new ADC European champion, and we've had a few more belts defended, more of the regional belts over the last few weeks and months. What have been your thoughts on the Championship Tour? We've had 3 weekends of it, and also the belts coming back as well.
Not the belts. Let's not talk too much on that. Yeah, exactly. The Championship Tour is really very good, and they do a very, very good job of covering the event as live, which, as we've discussed, some of those WDF events don't. So I think that they understand that is a really important aspect, and it gets really good engagement rates as well, which is great to see on a multitude of different platforms. So that's good. This is the digital comms side of my job coming out. So and that's really, really positive. And hopefully they can do more championship tour events next year, and hopefully they can expand. Hopefully they can get more prize money. Hopefully they can expand it to the women as well. So very good foundation on which to build. And as I say, it's great that you can go onto Dart Atlas and see what the scores are, and as live scores as well. And we sort of take it for granted, but this is that is revolutionary for grassroots darts as a whole. If you're not on Dart Connect, clicking hard refresh on Darts for Windows /live. I mean, it's a far cry from that, isn't it? I'll just briefly touch on the belts because you brought it up. I have to say, I do mention these to people, in grassroots darts, and people say, "Oh, are they still happening?" Those they don't really know what they're all about. There are now grudge matches. People say, "I don't know what that's all about either." So it doesn't seem to permeate through or cut through the noise, is what I would say. And of course, it's been such a long time now that any sort of momentum that they had was almost been gone by the wayside, really, in that respect. You know that I'm not as interested in that aspect of it, but I have to say, Alex, that when I looked up the night that they advertised in terms of the this belt night, now there was a live stream. I can't find it anywhere, but there was one. They were uploading games intermittently to YouTube. It was packed. It was packed wherever it was held. It was very, very busy indeed, and the crowd were really getting into it. So that just proves the point. What the hell do I know?
Definitely. And just starting with the championship tour, we've had a couple more weekends since we last spoke, the second and third weekends, and we had one in Bristol, Steve Brown winning one of the events, Dan Reed winning the other event, and then more recently, I think only a couple of weeks ago, we had good friend of the show, Adam Smith-Neal, and Lee Budgeon winning the event. So we've had 6 different winners from the 6 different events, and we've got one more weekend to come. I think it's coming up in Bristol again at the end of September, and then I think the top 64 players on that are going to qualify for the grand finals in Reading in October. So that's coming up soon, and I think they're getting pretty good numbers as well, aren't they? Around about 130 to 150 entries across the 3 weekends so far, which has been good. And yeah, like we say, we've seen a lot of good feedback from the people that have played in the events about how good the setup is, and hopefully we'll see those events continue to grow, because I think that is a big USP for the ADC, is having that professional setup for these championship tour events, hopefully putting on more of them next year and really seeing that start to grow. And as far as the belt side of things, yeah, I think it's something that me and you, we're not a huge fan of, but we can see why they're doing it. It's something a bit different. And Jared Cole, he's got to be one of the longest reigning champions ever, because he won the MAD Global belt from Wayne Moran, I think it was July last year, and he's not had any title defences since then. And I was just looking at the ADC website, £2,000, Matthew. We're going to start a fundraising page. Hopefully we can get you a game with Jared, or if we can't raise that much, it'll be £1,500 the starting bid to get a game with Kevin Painter for that European belt. So yeah, the belts is something that we're still seeing more of. I think there's still more to come from that. I don't think it's fully got off the ground yet as far as an ADC viewpoint. We've not seen all the belts defended, and in some cases we've not seen belts defended in MAD times or ADC times. So we've seen players awarded these belts back in 2020 and they've not defended them yet, and I think some of them they've never even got the belt yet. So hopefully we'll see that fully get off the ground. We'll see the belts come through and cut through a bit more, because at the moment it is another branch of the ADC, but I guess they want to make it bigger than it perhaps is at the moment.
It reminds me, when you're talking about that GoFundMe, which we're not doing, to be clear, Phil Taylor came into Riley's Victoria. Well, I love this anecdote. He came into Riley's Victoria and he said, and someone recognised him who was also throwing darts at the same time as Phil. And Phil said, "Oh, I'll play you." He said, "Oh, really? Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I'll play you for £100. And I was like, "Oh, right, yeah. No, you're going to give me £100 and then I'll play you. Yeah, Phil, you can't be short of cash, surely. But just lastly, just on ADC, I'm conscious that we haven't had a chance to speak to Steve Brown recently to get his thoughts on all of this. And I believe he has qualified for the championship at the weekend. So hopefully we'll get a chance to offer his point of view on this side of things on Saturday, fingers crossed. And of course, you and I haven't played yet. We haven't made our Dart Atlas debuts. My goodness. Well, we've got to sort that out, haven't we?
Yeah, we definitely do. We'll get something in the diary. We'll have a game, and you'll probably average 75 or something and play really well again. And let's move things forward. We'll get onto the UKDA. Of course, it's a bit of a quiet period for the UKDA at the moment. They've had their first season. They've had all their end of season events. But looking ahead, we've got the second season of the UKDA County Darts coming up in a few months' time. But the big news that the fixtures have been announced for the 2022-23 season. But the big talking point is that the Magic Weekend, which we spoke about on the show before, which was held for the first time at the end of this first season just gone, it's been scrapped. There's been a decision to not host the Magic Weekend for the 2022-23 season. What was your reaction when you saw the news?
It had to happen. It had to, because unfortunately, the way the feedback went, and certainly I spoke to a lot of players off the record in relation to what they thought of it, and managers, and unfortunately, it was just overwhelmingly negative in relation to the Magic Weekend. The issues were related to, well, obviously the Wi-Fi was an issue. It was cold. It was pricey, I think, as well. And, someone said to me, well, it's an admirable attempt, but it's not county darts. And I think that probably just about summed it up, really. But I think what you have to remember is, well, UKDA was in its first year. I think it's very clear that of the three options that were on the table between UKDA, BDO and Tri-Nations, remember, those were the three options that were available in the middle of lockdown, wasn't it? First lockdown, when counties were having to decide what they were going to do. It's very clear that the UKDA was quite clearly the best choice of the three, and they're doing a very good job. And the vast majority are volunteers, and they do it in their spare time, and they've done a really good job of continuing rich tradition, which has produced so many very talented players through the years. So for that, they should be commended. They should also be commended for the fact that they're doing a great job in publicising county darts and making a big deal of the achievements like player milestones, as well as the ranking tables. And the other positive, and we've forgot to mention this about the ADC, of course, in amateur darts in particular, and darts in general, what's it all about? Money. What would you rather? Would you rather a trophy or money? 99 players out of 100 would say money, I think. Maybe that's controversial. Write in, let us know. But, it's great that players of the weekend or, man of the match or whatever, league-wise will get a cash bonus. And the same goes for ADC, where Steve Brown quite rightly texted in last time on the last episode. And if you're top of those rankings, you get a cash bonus, and that means an awful lot to players at a grassroots level where margins are very, very tight, and they feel that performances should be rightly rewarded with a cash bonus. And I don't think we've ever seen that before from any from an organisation organising amateur darts or county darts in terms of cash bonuses. So I think that's really good. I think the other news to note is that Johnny Stefano has actually stepped away from UKDA work since we last did the last episode, replaced by Richard Biggs, and is another great person who I've had the pleasure of meeting through the one county game that I was able to get to in March, which was just a fantastic experience. So what have you made of it then, Alex, in terms of the UKDA?
I don't think many people were really surprised that they scrapped the Magic weekend, and we were looking at it, I guess, from the outside looking in, looking at all the feedback that there was on social media after that Magic weekend, and a lot of it unfortunately was negative, and we looked through a lot of it on one of our last shows, talking about how the Magic weekend went, and on paper it looked like a great idea, getting all those counties together for one weekend, a big celebration of county darts, but there was a lot of things that unfortunately didn't go the way that the UKDA wanted to, and I think if they were to have put it on again next year and it had have gone wrong again, then you may have lost a few people. They'd just maybe give up on county darts if that's the way they were going to do. They weren't going to listen to the feedback. So I think it is a good thing. We've seen the UKDA, they have took all that feedback on board, and I don't think it's an idea that is never going to come back. I think maybe we will see it come back in maybe a different version one day, who knows. But I think the UKDA, they have listened to the players and all the counties, and they've got to be applauded for that, haven't they? They've not just buried their head in the sand and said, no, this is our idea, we love it, we're going to do it again next year. They've listened, and that's fair play to them for doing that. And there'll be plenty more ideas, I think, come along, and we'll see a lot of the ideas they'll get right. So I think just because they've got one idea that hasn't gone to plan doesn't mean that all the next ones are going to be the same. So yeah, I think it's probably the right decision this time around, and we have got the fixtures that have come out for next year, I believe, and we didn't really see much about it on social media or anywhere, but I believe Lancashire were the ones that won the Premiership in the end, the first UKDA version of the county system. They won the Premiership last year, so they're going to be the defending champions next year. And I think Staffordshire and Kent were the ones that got promoted to the top division. So a belated congratulations to them. They're going to be playing in the top division of county darts next year.
Just to stress, you do have to try new ideas, and absolutely you should be fully commended for trying something new, because as we know in darts, if you don't try something new, it can be just the same old stuff, and it becomes a very stagnant product. And even the PDC, with its World Series, glorified exhibition circuit, which is doing at the moment, Paul Nicholson has alluded to this, it does feel very stagnant. So you do have to try something new, and should never fault anyone for that. And in terms of other sports have tried similar concepts to what that Magic weekend was. Athletics tried the same thing which I went to. It was the British Men's Athletics League, which is sort of similar, but clubs basically. Think of Super League clubs. That was a similar sort of parallel. And then there was 50 clubs all there on one day, the 5 different divisions. And they did it twice. And the first year, it overran by 2.5 hours. You had teams from Scotland there, and they had to get back. They had coaches booked. So that was the first year. Second year, it went much better, but you could just see it in the officials' faces that they were absolutely exhausted. And a lot of officials in the previous year, the volunteer officials, these are, just didn't want to know and didn't turn up for it, so they quietly scrapped that. So you're not alone in terms of the Magic weekend going. They did, however, have the national finals, and they fixed the Wi-Fi issues, and they seemed to fix a lot of the issues. In fairness, there was perhaps one mistake, which was alluded to in terms of the draw, which caused this was the champion of champions aspect. This is where all the Super League teams on the Saturday, all the winning Super League teams go and compete against one another. There was a mistake with the draw, and it overran a bit, but you could still follow it all on Dark Connect, and it ran very well, which was one of the issues with Magic Weekend, of course, when you couldn't really follow anything. It was just completely very hit and miss, and it was more miss, let's be honest. But that did seem to go very well, and I think they should be very, very much commended for that.
Yeah, that did look like a good weekend, and I was just looking at the roundup on the website, the national finals that they had, the UKDA, and we had 423 singles players, 190 pairs, 58 Super League teams, all in the venue, and just picking out some of the winners that we had in there. And of course, someone that you'll know well, Martin Lukeman winning the men's singles title, Vicky Prüm coming away with the ladies title in there, and the pairs as well. This was a lovely story. I don't know if you saw this, Chris Dobie and his dad Gordon winning the men's pair title, and Steph Dudley, who got to the ladies singles, she managed to win the pairs with Debs Watling. So those were the winners in those events. We also had the Super League going on as well, and Chepstow Football Club, the West of England Super League champions. They went the entire season unbeaten, and that included the Champions Cup as well. They beat Cedars Park, the team that's literally a 5-minute walk down the road for me. They've not asked me to play in their team yet, and I think for good reason. But they won the men's title, and then Trina Gulliver's team, the Cuban Triangle, they won the Women's Cup, beating Hoyland's Codner Ladies from Derbyshire. So plenty of big names in there as well, and good to see all those get involved in it as well. And I guess sadly, from my perspective, my local team just falling short in the men's final.
If they'd had you in it, Alex, they would have done the business, wouldn't they?
No,
there's a reason why they're not asking you, because they've got Stephen Burton, Andrew Gilding, Brett Clayton in there. That's a hell of a team, isn't it? And there's some wonderful names of teams in that compete in the UKDA Champions Cup. It's great fun, and it's a great event, and remains on my bucket list. So next year, let's go.
Sounds good to me. Hopefully we'll both be playing as well. We'll be in a team, who knows. But what about the online league? It's another thing to talk about as far as darts underneath the 128, and it's a league which continues to go on. Every single week we're seeing events go on. The Saturday night finals each week, and we've got the Champions Week. We spoke with Graham Hall on the Weekly Darts Cast recently, and I believe we were chatting off air. It's a 12-week phase before we get to the Champions Week, but I guess the big news, the rumours going around, is that we are going to see a crowd finally for the online league for the finals night on a Saturday, and a different venue as well. What's been your take on how the live league's going on, and this potential live crowd that they're going to be playing in front of as well?
Did I sense a bit of weariness in your voice there, Alex, when you started talking about it's the online league and it goes on? Now remember, so since the last episode, of course, there have been approximately 1,260 games.
Wow.
Which gives you some idea. So I thought it'd be quite good if we could go through each of those one by one now, actually. Course, yeah. And we started with James Richardson and versus Matt Denham. What a game that was, Alex.
Yeah, great game. I mean, just a shame it was best of 7 legs, but yeah, a game that I think I've gone back and watched at least twice a week since it happened. So yeah, definitely go and check that one out.
Oh dear. Yes. Thank you for playing along there.
Second game?
It's second game, yes. No, I only wrote the gag for the first for the first one.
We should get the results up, and I need to guess who won each game and see how far I can get.
Wow. Plumbing the depths of podcasting. No, I think we have to be honest of what the online league is. It is a betting league, isn't it? It is designed for people to bet on, and you can only hope that people do it responsibly. I'm sure they are, he says. But you've got to hope that that people are gambling responsibly in relation to it, because it's funded for that. Now, for the players, it's absolutely brilliant, because what's the big discussion point at the moment in relation to the PDC Pro Tour? It's, should all the players in the room be guaranteed money before you've even thrown a dart? That's one of the big discussion points, right? So so at the moment, you've got 128 tour carders in there, and then 64 will win, and they'll win £750, and then the other 64 won't get anything at all. And the discussion at the moment is that right? Because in other sports, such as tennis, and I think snooker, if I'm correct in thinking that, which is the sort of the knockout based events, you are guaranteed money even if you lose. Now in the live league, all of those players are on guaranteed money, because they're on an appearance fee for being there. And then of course, the better you do, higher the financial incentive as you go through the week. And then of course you get your bonuses on the Saturday. That's amazing. I can't think of any other aspects of darts other than in the PDC where that is possible, or the very, very large events that you've qualified for, where you're guaranteed money even before you've thrown a dart. That's pretty amazing. So for that, they should absolutely be commended. And if they're going to have finals nights on a Saturday in front of a live crowd, and I think we managed to get one of the people who's connected with this to say this online, that it's going to be in a converted nightclub, which in a similar sort of area. I think it'll be very good, and hopefully we can get along and see it. Anything that grows the game is very good indeed, and the viewing figures remain very steady as it goes along, and it's great for all the players that do get the chance to play it, and they are extending the number of people that are involved in it, and we're starting to see now the more international players. And yes, of course, a lot of the players are very similar, and variety is the spice of life. So hopefully more overseas players write in and get the chance to play in that league, because it freshens it up.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it was Phil, some might know him as Scholesy, confirmed on one of his shows that we are going to see the live crowd come for finals night on the online league, which will add a different dimension to it after all these weeks, all these months playing the online league with no atmosphere. They are going to get an atmosphere with the crowd, so that's going to be good when that finally comes round. I'm not quite sure when that's going to happen. Maybe they are going to save it for that Champion of Champions week, or they might try and bring it in a little bit earlier. We don't know. But yeah, just touching on what you said there, good to see different players get involved. I think we are going to see Paul Nicholson get involved in, I think it's either September or October. He's going to play a week of the online league as well. So it's good to see some of those players coming back and getting involved in it. And of course, the newer players as well get a taste of it as well. And Graham Hall, when we spoke to him, he said one of his best achievements this year was winning that week of the online league. And you think of how many titles that he's won this year on the local circuit, and doing well on the Challenge Tour, and getting a good run at the UK Open. The online league was right up there, so it shows you what the players involved think of it as well. But looking away from that, we've also got to touch on, before we go, the PDC as well. And since we last spoke, we did see the first Women's World Match Play take place at Blackpool, and Fallon Sherrick winning the title in Blackpool. We've also had the announcement the Women's Series extended for 2023. We're going to see more events. But as far as the ladies game as a whole right now, as far as its potential growth going forward, we're seeing more events. We're seeing the PDC put more investment in. Where do you see it at the moment? Is there more to come, do you think?
Well, I think it's brilliant, really, because historically, if you remember, I always used to moan that the only female representation you used to see in the PDC were walk-on girls. And you wouldn't see any players at all who were female. This is just after Stanislas Bombazlova stepped away and went back to the BDO. Now you've got fantastic investments at long last, long overdue investment, and there was a letter sent quite a while, I think it was about a couple of months ago now, from Tommy Thompson, which was an open letter, just giving his viewpoint on the sport as a whole. And one of the things that he said was in relation to the women's game, and saying, well, as soon as the PDC lose interest, and as soon as this doesn't make money for them, they will lose interest and they'll walk away from the women's game entirely. I don't think that's true. I think that to be able to put on more women's series events, that was a big announcement and a real big shock when that news came out. So that's great to see, and it does give lots and lots of opportunities now, and hopefully the women's game embraces it. I thought the match play was good fun. I was at the Basingstoke Open on the same day. It was quite fun to watch that as we went along. Obviously there was some comments on the overall standard, but it's the first one, come on, and it was still very exciting to watch, so it doesn't really matter, quite frankly. So and it was a fun of a sold out crowd for all intents and purposes, so it can only grow, and I think it's great. Yeah,
it was a good afternoon, that Women's World Match Play, and I think really, as far as the PDC, and yeah, there may be some concerns about how long is it going to go on for. Are they going to keep going regardless of the uptake in entries, in the interest that it gets? But we know with the PDC, with anything, that if it's not financially viable for them, if it's not doing well for them, then they will look elsewhere. They'll look at other options. And we've seen it with the World Series. They've had events in Dubai, in China, in Japan, and we've not had them events for a long time now, and they've looked in other markets. So the PDC, they are the top level of the game, and they do offer out other opportunities with the Challenge Tour, the Development Tour, and now the Women's Series as well. And yeah, you just got to hope that it is something that they are going to continue to do. And I think the fact that they've said the Women's World Match Play is going to be on again next year, 2023, they're also going to have more Women's Series events next year. I think that tells you all you need to know, that they are serious about the ladies game and putting in their own investment into growing it a bit more. And I guess really we'll see a lot more this weekend, because we've got the fourth weekend of the Women's Series this year, but it's going to be the first outside of England. It's going to be in Germany this year. The first three have been in England, and they've had a pretty good uptake in entries. The Germany one, of course, we all remember last year, that one was cancelled at quite short notice, and they added loads of events to the other weekends left in England because of a low entry for that one. So hopefully, I think restrictions are a lot better this time round. There's less of them, so hopefully we're going to see a lot more ladies playing it. But I think this is going to be a big insight into how the ladies game in the PDC is going to progress. Are those ladies that play in the events in England willing to travel and play the ones in Germany? We don't know the answer to that until this weekend, but that will be interesting to keep an eye out on. And I think, yeah, we have got more opportunities now coming for the ladies through the PDC, through other avenues as well. We touched on the ADC, that World Open. There's going to be a ladies one as well. The WDF, the World Championships come back. And I think, yeah, if you're a ladies player right now, you're going to be aiming for the PDC to play in the Women's Series to try and get into that World Match Play. And if you finish high enough, the World Championship, the Grand Slam. But at the same time, you can also play the WDF circuit, get into their World Championship and become a world champion. And then you've also got the online league if opportunities come up there, the ADC as well. So, there's plenty going on for the ladies at the moment. And I think as a darts fan, what you want to see is all of them playing in the same venue week in, week out. Of course, that's not going to happen. Players will have their own preferences on what they want to play in, but hopefully we'll see more opportunities. Well, we'll see it more times, these top ladies going up against each other, because when they do produce some excellent games. So hopefully we'll see more of that.
We're absolutely desperate to see Beau Greaves take part in one of these, aren't we?
We certainly are, and maybe we will see it in this weekend coming up. We don't know yet, but the PDC have said that the qualification for next year's World Match Play starts this weekend. So it is going to be a year-long thing, starting from the end of qualification just gone to this to next year. So it's not going to start from next year, that one. So maybe that will entice Beau to get involved in that. We don't know, but yeah, just a few points before we do wrap up the show. And we have had a listener question come in for the show this week, and just paraphrasing it because I didn't go back and read it exactly, but it does come from Andrew Sinclair inside the WDF. He says, what is your favourite flavour J2O?
Yeah, oh God, we must have had other questions than this, surely. Apple and raspberry. But fun fact, first date with Mrs. Kiernan, Glitterberry limited edition.
Wow, pulled out the big guns there, didn't you?
Well, indeed. And yourself, Alex, you must have a favourite J2O flavour that you like.
Well, there is a bit of a story behind this one, and it goes back a few years. I started calling a J2O. I don't know why. I just decided to call it a J20. Me and my mates had a bit of fun seeing who we could catch out when we'd order a drink at the bar, call it a J20. And, sometimes people's reaction would be, wow, I've called it a J2O all these years. I never knew it was called that. And sometimes people will say, no, it's actually a J2O, what you on about. But the best catch that we've had, and again, it's another friend of the show, Dave Parletti at Lakeside a few months ago, he offered to buy me a drink, and I said, well, I am working, so I'll have a J20. And he said, I don't know what that is. And he was holding one. And I said, it's one of them. And he said, oh, for all these years, I've called it a J2O. So lo and behold, he goes up to the bar, orders me a drink, orders a J20, and gets a very strange look back. So yeah, that was a funny moment. But my favourite, I'll go with an orange and passion fruit for me. I had one on Saturday before the football, and yeah, very refreshing. And J20, J2O, however you want to say it, if you do want to sponsor me and make me a brand ambassador, do please get in touch.
Yes. Just lastly, before we talk about the Champion of Champions, I once read the menu of a drinks menu in a bar and said, "Hello, can I have one of these Jager bombs, please?" And, I've never been allowed to forget that, let me tell you. Right, very exciting. Thanks to yourself and the kind team at Red Dragon Darts. I'm going to make a quick cameo appearance at the Champion of Champions finals event in Cardiff this weekend, which is just another event that's long been on the bucket list, and of course this has been away for a number of years because of what we don't talk about it, and it's the first time since 2019 it's been held, and this is an event which taps into the spirit of the old News of the World tournament, which was a best of 3 legs event, and basically it was a big staple of darts and grassroots darts, of course, since the 40s right through to sort of the 80s and early 90s. And it's really exciting because they've had loads and loads of qualification events for this. There's 256 qualifiers in it. They're all going to play best of 3. It's being held in Cardiff Depot, which is it's a new venue as well, and I think it's quite a popular venue as well. And so I'm going to go along and get as many interviews as I can. So if you're listening and you're going to be there, come and find me. That would be really good. And then I'm going to film some of the games as well, because they've let me do that. Just a pre-record just for my YouTube as well. And then I have to leave before the end, which is a shame. But it was either that or don't get a chance to go at all. So it'll be a great day, and really looking forward to it. And you will hear an audio of that. The type of players that have entered, just to be clear, there are about 7 tour card holders in it. Martin Luman, Connor Scutt, John Brown. Let's try and remember these off the top of my head. David Evans, Willie Borland, Jim Williams is in there, and would you believe it, I've forgotten the other one, Richie Burnett. Yes, of course. And Marshall James is in it as well. There's a name from the past, 1997 Lakeside runner-up. So yes, should be a really great day's darts, and can't wait to cover it.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. And a few other names, I was having a look through the list on there as well. You've got the reigning WDF world champion Neil Duff in there, Nick Kenny, a few other names to give a mention to as well. The few of the guys that you know well, of course, doing their social media, Martin Lukeman, Connor Scott, you mentioned. But yeah, it's a brilliant event, one that unfortunately I've not been able to get to. I'm a bit jealous that you're going to be there this weekend to go and watch it. But you look down that list of players that have won the event, and yeah, the first one that we've had for 3 years, but we've had Gerwyn Price win it in 2015, Johnny Clayton win it in 2016. They've not done too bad for themselves since then, have they? And the professional amateur Paul Hogan, Ryan Serwins, the reigning champion Jim Williams. So good mix of players in there. Of course, 4 of those current tour card holders as well. And Paul Hogan probably would have been a tour card holder if he'd have committed a bit more to the PDC side of things during his career at some point. But yeah, all quality players in there, and it's an exciting event. Great to have it back as well, because it was one of those events which we all looked forward to each year, finding out how it was going to go, and great to see that you're going to be there covering the event for us. We appreciate that, and look forward to seeing what you can bring our listeners to watch or listen to over the next few weeks.
It'll be great. It'll be a great day. Can't wait.
Good stuff. Well, that's pretty much everything for this edition of Under the 128. Well, hopefully it won't be another 3 months before the next one. We'll try and get one in a little bit before then, but our schedules, we are both busy, but we do love doing this. So hopefully we'll get one in soon. Of course, you'll hear Matthew, any audio that he gets for us, we'll be playing it on the weekly Dartscast. So keep an eye out for his interviews from Cardiff this weekend for the Champion of Champions. But aside from that, Matthew, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I think we've covered everything. It's just great that there's so much to talk about, isn't it? It's wonderful, and days like seeing all these events on at the moment, it seemed like a long way off when we were all locked in our houses, didn't they?
Definitely does. Well, if you want to follow us, of course, you can follow this podcast at Under the 128 on Twitter. If you want to hear more regular podcasts, myself and Burton DeWitt, we do one every single week. You can probably guess from the title, the Weekly Dartscast. That's at Weekly Dartscast. If you want to follow Matthew Kiernan, he always provides some great content on his own Twitter. The videos reacting to Dart Connect are always a highlight of mine. So at the Darting Nerd for him. And if you want to follow me as well, it's at Laumos20. Do give us a follow. Come and say hello. And if you've got any feedback on the show, you want to give us your thoughts on anything that we've spoke about, then by all means do so. Any of those Twitter accounts, they'll find one of us. And look forward to hearing from you guys. And Matthew, again, have a great time this weekend. We'll be back again soon to look back on all things going on under the 128.